and welcome to the Marathon Medic podcast. My name's Amy and I'm a junior doctor and running coach based in London. In this series of the podcast, Running and Me, I'll be chatting with runners about why they started running and the benefits it's had to their health, both physically and mentally. On today's episode, I'm chatting to Ben Cook. Ben is an Oxford-based runner who has combined his love for travel and running in a project called Run 12. This project sees him run 12 different marathons in 12 different countries over 12 months, all in aid of the Alzheimer Society. Ben documents all his running on his blog, and that can be found at runningmancook.com. So Ben, we met just over a year ago in Tokyo, and that was at Namban Rengo, which is an international running club based in Tokyo. So I was hoping you could just kick this off and just explain what made you end up in Tokyo and how you came to find Namban Rengo and join that group.
So firstly, Amy, thanks for having me on. It's great to chat to you about running always. So I ended up in Japan just through my work, really. I was lucky enough to sort of get an opportunity there in like a finance job, which is what I do. Obviously, the running culture in Japan, once I was there, I wanted to kind of see it for myself and try and get involved. And luckily, Namban Rengo, they've kind of identified themselves as like the international running group. So it was really great to get involved with like loads of different people from around the world. It was run by this sort of, I think it's 65-year-old. I know you met him, Amy, but
yeah, someone that he told me he moved there like kind of 20, 30 years ago and had just fallen in love with it and never left.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. Like he'd been in Japan longer than like we'd been alive. So I can even imagine like what it was like back then. But obviously the sessions were always at the track, probably one of the only tracks in Tokyo because it's just full of houses. But yeah, they always did a 5K time trial every month, which I believe is the day we met. I actually have a funny recollection from that day because
I'm not sure if I want you to share it. Go ahead. I'll risk it.
Because I remember we were stood at the start line of the 5K, and we were just obviously introducing us to each other. You asked me kind of what the standard was, and my response to that was, "Well, the winner will do it in about 16 minutes," and then we started at that point.
Yeah. I can remember.
And I remember you saying to me afterwards, like, that was the worst possible advice because you thought this was like an elite group, but obviously it was like mixed.
To be fair, they are very, very fast runners, some of those people. I can remember there was a few evenings because they had different sessions every week, and there was a few where I just blew up at the beginning because the people I was running with were so fast, and I just got a bit carried away to start with. Yeah,
so true. Like it was mixed ability, like from, I don't know what, 16-minute 5K to probably 25, 30. But they only did two groups, didn't they? So you had like the massive spread.
Definitely fast runners. I think one of the things I was surprised at when I got to Japan is because there is such a huge running culture in Japan. I found running a little bit difficult to access in Tokyo in terms of running routes. Finding nice places to run where you weren't kind of constantly having to stop to cross roads and wait for traffic lights and loads of people everywhere. Was that your experience when you were running in Japan, or did you manage to kind of find those routes a little bit more easily than I maybe did?
Yeah, I think that it was really hard. You had the track, and I think that is probably why the track was so busy all the time when we were there, just because that was like one of the few places where you can just get a decent session in. But yeah, you end up sort of stopping for red lights everywhere because there's not as if there's like roundabouts or anything. But yeah, it is a bit frustrating, and you just have to find big parks. I know the Imperial Palace is probably the best place.
Yeah, that's where I replaced my Greenwich Park loops with Imperial Palace loops.
Yeah, exactly.
But there was a few times I would plan routes to green areas, and I'd get there and realised it was like a shrine or a temple where you weren't allowed to run or maybe even go in at all. So my whole route planning went out the window a little bit.
Yeah, it's very true. It is hard though. I completely get that. But we kind of embraced the, running through the skyscrapers and running through like the Shibuya crossing, for example. I used to go there at least probably once a week. That was super cool.
Yeah, it's great as a tourist. I did most of my exploring by foot there for sure.
100%. But yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Now you're back in London, what would you say is the thing you miss most about living in Tokyo?
Oh goodness me, probably the food. I think
Yeah.
people have this. I certainly did when I moved there. I sort of was like, oh, I'm going to have sushi every day because that's like all Japan is known for. But like the variety they actually have is amazing.
And I think half of it is the way they display things as well. Everything's
Yeah,
always so well presented.
or the plastic food, the plastic food outside, the plastic beers. Yeah, that's funny.
And when we were in Tokyo, very quickly after I met you, you had a running injury and you gradually built up after that and got back to running and then arrived in London and was in a small accident and again had an injury. I was just wondering if you could chat about that for a little bit and also what you've learned from those two experiences and if that's helped or hindered your running and if you run differently because of that.
Yeah, well, it's actually going back to that first 5K run. That was the day that I injured myself. But it actually begins sort of 6 months before, probably in like October 2018. There was a small tear in my tendon in my left leg, which I didn't really. It sort of slowly came on and then sort of went one day, and that was it for probably 6 weeks. But I never really recovered properly and always just tried to get back into running as soon as I could. And I was, I'll do a quick few miles just to test it. And I mean, it never worked. And it just compounded on that day where I did 5K flat out and, aggravated it so badly. Looking back, I think giving it a chance to recover properly, like play the long game, having those short-term games, you're only going to injure it more. That was a huge lesson for me.
I can't not run through an injury, even though my advice to anyone else would be take the rest. I just can't, and I'm always pushing myself back into running far too quickly.
Yeah, so true. So you can't help it. Like we run because we love it, right? And just to say, for example, you might be walking, this was even the case for me, like you'll be walking down the street perfectly fine, you don't feel a thing, and you'll think, oh, I must be able to run. If I can walk, I can run. And then you put a little bit of pressure
you really can't.
Yeah, exactly. That like sort of that 6 months was very hit and miss in terms of my running experience. And that lesson, so because then I got a place for Chicago 2019, which was obviously in October. So all of my training I was kind of built up for the summer, and I was really, really careful not to like slowly increase the miles, really, really look after myself, because I really wanted to sort of, because I haven't actually run like a hard race since probably spring 2018. So I really wanted that chance after 18 months to do that. Sadly, I got knocked off my bike, which put an end to that. I broke my toe pretty badly. So that took me out for 6 weeks, and then that took us to about mid-September. And then I had like 3 or 4 weeks of training to just sort of that. I mean, at that point, it was a case of if I can get round, that would be great. And thankfully, I did that. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, and I guess you haven't had the best string of luck with races, because this year you decided to do the Run 12 project, which, if I'm correct, was that you were going to run 12 marathons in 12 different countries in aid of Alzheimer's research?
Society, yeah.
So coronavirus has kind of taken that opportunity away from you, but could you just tell us a little bit about what the Run 12 project was and why specifically you chosen the Alzheimer's Society?
Well, the Run 12 project is something that I've sort of thought about for a long time, and it's actually going back to the fact that I've missed a lot of marathons. Like sort of 3 in a row have been affected by injury, effectively. So I was like, I really wanted to sort of this would give me a chance to, like, because you can't run 12 marathons all hard. It would be a case of traveling the world, seeing some sights, running these marathons while also giving back, because I've always tried to sort of run for myself and run for times, whereas I feel like I wanted to give something a bit back through my running, because I haven't really done that so far. Alzheimer's Society has always been kind of close to me, just because it's affected my family a lot. I think 3 of my grandparents were affected by the disease. Yeah, it resonates a lot with me, and I just wanted to kind of try and open people's eyes and inspire people if I can. I've got some great messages since I announced it that, you know, people have taken up running. In fact, just a week or two ago, my cousin ran her first half marathon, which was really great to hear. And just like, it gives people a vehicle to donate through, obviously, this project and these marathons, but also, yeah, it's great to hear people sort of getting out the door, especially during this. I know we're talking about coronavirus now having such a big impact on the world and this project, etc. But it's great to see so many people sort of go into exercise. Like, there are so few things we can do, and running is one of them.
Yeah, and running seems to, just kind of looking out into the park, there's so many people that seem to be new to running. So I'm just really hoping people keep it up once the lockdown's over.
It's
I
so
think
true.
it just shows how little you need. Like, everything's shut down. We've got no access to gyms or anything like that. But yet running you can still do.
It's probably the most inclusive sport in the world, isn't it? I mean, all you need is a pair of running shoes.
How were people, what was the idea behind donating for the Run 12? Were they giving you kind of a set amount of sponsorship money per every marathon you did, or was it just up to people to donate what they wanted to donate?
I think it was up to people to donate what they wanted. It was just that, you know, I wanted to sort of show what running can give you. Like, I love running, and I wanted to broadcast that to people and just say, look, this is how running makes me feel. It can make you feel the same thing. It's the sense of freedom. You can go anywhere in the world and do it. It's not like, you know, say we play a game of football, you can't just go to, for example, my first one was in Marrakesh. You can't just go to Marrakesh and play a game of football, whereas you can go there and run a race or a marathon. And it is the only sport in the world where the elite and the general public share the same racetrack, share the same course. So you have fans and the footballers in football, whereas the London Marathon, okay, it didn't happen this year, but, you know, you've got Mo Farah, you've got Eliud Kipchoge running exactly the same streets that, you know, the 7 hour marathon runners are doing, and I think that's amazing, and one of the beautiful things about running.
And it's a very easy spectator sport as well, as in London Marathon. You literally just, you know, line up at the end of the road. You don't have to get your tickets. It's just anyone that wants to be there and support and watch can be there doing that.
Yeah, and everyone gets up for it as well. I mean, you've seen the crowds. It's just
London's biggest street party.
You know it.
So you were supposed to do 12 marathons. You did 2?
I've done 2, yes.
And
yes.
I think by the looks of things, they were quite extreme ones. Could you just share which marathons they were and how they went? Yeah,
so the first one was Marrakesh. I started with kind of an Africa leg, because the second one was in Algeria, which was in the Sahara Desert, which was a whole nother story. But so the Marrakesh, that was in January. It was a 7 a.m. start, and it was actually dark when we started, which was pretty weird. But I remember stood at the start, because it was something like 2 or 3 degrees. Stood at the start line, it was absolutely freezing, but it was due to get up to about 20 just in a couple of hours.
I was going to ask what the temperature was, and when you said 2 to 3 degrees, I was almost embarrassed, because I was thinking it's going to be really, really hot.
So, you know, you're stood at the start line absolutely freezing. I was in a big hoodie 5 minutes before the start and just tossed it aside, shivered for 5 minutes, and, you know, away you go. And you actually run the first sort of leg, the first maybe, I don't know, half an hour or hour or so. You're just running towards the sun and you're just watching it rise. It's pretty cool. The special thing about Marrakesh is like the Medina, the old town, but you can't really run through there because it is so old. But a pretty cool race. I'm really, really glad I did it.
What was the support like out there?
It was really quiet. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 sort of cheer spots, only really near the finish, because even there were points where there was one particular point at around 10 miles where all the leaders of the half marathon came past with, like, you know, the car with all the times on it and the elites, and then the marathon runners kind of went the long way and then came back. I was running with like the back markers of the half marathon, so I guess in the final 5K or so, you're overtaking all these half marathon runners. It was quite that was quite motivating.
Yeah, I had that in the first marathon I ever did, which was Richmond, and you meet at the end, and
really?
I found it quite difficult because by that point you're so tired and it gets quite congested and you're trying to push your way past without actually pushing anyone, and you're so tired.
they're obviously concentrating on their race. They've got a race to run, whereas you're kind of trying to come up like left, right, left, right.
And then your second one, how did that go?
So the second one is a pretty crazy story. So that was the Sahara Desert Marathon, which was kind of right in the south of Algeria, which is basically there's nothing there. Unfortunately, about 3 days before I was due to leave, because there was loads of visa delays, the flight I was due to get actually was fully booked, and I only found this out about 3 days before. And my only option was to fly the night before the race, and so the race was at 10 a.m. on the Tuesday, and I arrived in the camp at 5 a.m. I got an hour's sleep. 6 o'clock, the alarm went off. I had to be out the door at 6:15, so I had to get all my kit ready, get everything on, pack on my bag, all my gels and stuff. It was just crazy. And then off I went. I didn't really have any time to think about what I was doing or time to get nervous. We got taken to this big tent where there was, breads and jams and biscuits for tea, coffee, etc. as breakfast. And then it was, okay, eat breakfast, get on a bus, take you to the start. There's the changing rooms. There's the start, the start. I mean, it was literally like 2 wooden posts and a flag. It was just.
That's so nice, isn't it?
It was really nice. There must have been maybe 100 people doing it, and because it was in a refugee camp, so all like the families were coming out and supporting. And there was a kids race. It was a really really nice event. But I wouldn't recommend running a marathon on an hour's sleep. Yeah,
how did that go? Those last few miles are hard enough as it is.
I actually met someone kind of on the transfer from the airport, and
who was equally as late as you.
Who was equally as late as me. They weren't running the marathon; they were doing the half.
Oh, okay.
But still crazy. And he was saying, I did it last year. This was my first marathon, and the second half is way harder. And I did looking back at my first marathon, I would have said the second half is harder, but that's just because it was my first marathon and I was so underprepared. And I didn't know whether to take that with a pinch of salt. But anyway, going forward to race day, so I was, running through the desert, and it was, to be honest, for the first half, it was pretty okay. It was lots of sort of dirt-packed sand. So it wasn't like you were crossing over dunes and maybe not what people imagine deserts to be. It was quite kind of a dirt road.
Yeah.
And then we arrived in kind of the middle camp and ran through and got loads of support, which was super nice. And then the second half, we started entering like soft sand dunes. Considering the extreme nature of the marathon, I think it was very well run, and the course was marked by kind of white rocks just placed every 100 meters or so. So you just have to kind of follow that. There was actually one point where I got a bit lost and I couldn't see a white rock because it was buried in the sand. They were like, that way. They were kind of pointing to go that way. I mean, looking back, that's the second half of that marathon was so hard. And by that, because it started at 10 a.m. So by the time you're in the second half, you're like past midday, you're in the peak sun. It was maybe 28, 29 degrees.
It's so strange how different those two marathons are. So they're both in very hot places, yet one's starting early and one's kind of pushing you further and further through the day.
Because I did it in about 3.5 hours, which I was actually really happy with.
Really impressive, yeah.
Yeah, I was so happy with that. But there are lots of people doing it even getting to the line in those conditions is an unbelievable effort. And I couldn't have imagined being out there in the sun longer because I was doing some videos as I was going around, and I was looking at them after, and my face is so red at the end,
covered in salt.
Yeah, it was tough, but it was such a unique experience. It was absolutely amazing.
It sounds like it, and I'm quite jealous of your Run 12 idea. I think it's a really great idea. Unfortunately, obviously, it has taken a turn for the worse, and that you can't do the rest of the marathons this year. I'm assuming. What is your plan going forward?
So I don't really have much of a plan, just because
You can't.
there is so much unknown.
Yeah.
So I planned, Barcelona, Paris, London, all in the first half of the year, all of which have been postponed. Even
Mhm.
Berlin in September has been postponed. So it's really hard to come up with a plan of, do I do it later this year? Do I kind of finish the year? Do I move it to next year? Or do I kind of come up with something different? Because the thought of doing Sahara again is hard to take, but it's something that I'm thinking about. And I think until we get more clarity on the coronavirus situation, it's really hard to. And obviously, I want to kind of honor what I said as well. So
Yeah.
all these people have committed.
Yeah, they've all
donated
given you loads
money.
of money. You've only ran 2 of the 12.
I've only run 2, so I need to at least do something for them.
Yourself a new challenge at the moment while we're in lockdown of 1 month, 1 mile. Is that right?
At the end of last year, I joined Purdue Performance, which is the Charlotte Purdue and Adam Clark coaching team. So they tried to keep all their athletes motivated by saying, let's do a 1 month, 1 mile challenge where you run a mile as quickly as you can, and then a month later try to beat it. So I've actually, I've got mine in 2 days' time, my second mile.
Okay.
So I did a 5 minutes 6 4 weeks ago, and I've got to try and beat that on Sunday. So. And
are you training for that, or is it just kind of a fun see where I'm at a month later kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's very much just I think it's just a fun thing. It's something to keep the mind occupied with everything being cancelled. Obviously, it's hard to keep that motivation.
Yeah,
I think
really
a lot
hard.
of runners, including myself, I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I've been using my running as just a nice thing to do in the day because it's the only time you can get out. I've been using my camera a lot more, just taking pictures of quiet London and enjoying my running and not thinking about the time, or just thinking about what a nice chance it is to get out for some fresh air.
With no races on the horizon, you don't know when you're going to have a next race. It's nice to have something to focus on, and this is a great way of doing it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good idea. Someone told me today about a 5K challenge where you try and run your fastest 5K, but you can stop your watch as many times as you like. So I guess it's kind of bringing in the mental game of like, do you do it in 1 minute and then you have a break and do another minute, or do you do it 1 kilometer at a time? So I might give that one a go just for the fun of it.
What's your tactic going to be for that?
Either a downhill stretch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, or I was thinking I'm quite keen on 1 minute, because I think after a minute your legs start to feel a bit funny if you're going all out.
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted.
Do it over like a month.
Yeah, there must be some rules. Like, it must be in one go, but I guess 100-meter sprints for the next month. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. You have cheated because I know you've listened to one of the previous podcasts, so you know what I'm about to ask you. I'm just going to ask you one word which sums up how running's changed your life.
Yeah, so sorry, I have cheated on this one. And I've managed to think about it. So I would say my word is passion.
Okay.
It's when I first started running, it was just something to do with friends, and it was just a way of kind of filling the days, really. But it has turned into something that I talk so passionately about, and that I have, I revolve my life around effectively. I'm doing this Run 12 challenge, and everything is, I need to consider all my holidays or whatever I do. It's always, okay, I've got this training on Sunday, I've got this run, or blah, blah, blah. So it's given me a passion. It's given me something that I love, and sort of inspiring others, or even talking to others about what it can do in the community, like these chats with you, for example. I think it's given me some passion. That was my word.
No, that's a really nice answer. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. If you want to learn more about Ben or visit his website, then you can head to runningmancook.com. I'll be back next week with one final episode in this podcast series. If you want to keep up to date with everything, follow along at Marathon Medic or head to marathonmedic.com.